All right, hello, present people. Today I'm talking to Sari Azout, writer, founder, and builder of Sublime, a tool for collecting and connecting ideas. If you've read her newsletter or seen her talk about what it means to become Un-LLM-able, you already know that Sari has this rare ability to name things many of us feel but can't quite articulate. We talk about the tension of making great work and getting people to actually see it, how it's sometimes not enough to make something wonderful. You have to figure out how to reach the right people. We talk about what it really looks like to build something long-term. Sari thinks of Sublime as a multi-decade project, and I feel the very same for present. So we bond over this shared belief of consistency over hype, and in general, the bliss and the battles of creating your own thing. Sari also shares what she learned about balancing motherhood and building and how hard it is to quiet the mind and why the flow state might be the best antidote to the anxiety of our overabundant digital but also physical worlds. This one's really close to my heart. I'm following Sari since a long time and I love how and what she's building, and I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Let's go. Hello, Sari. Please tell us more about your upbringing and how you ended up where you are today.
Thank you, Hugo, and it's so nice to be here. My upbringing. So I was born and raised in a small town in Colombia called Barranquilla, which is famous for, that's where Shakira's from. So if you've heard the song Hips Don't Lie, it says, En Barranquilla se baila así. And actually, Gabriel Garcia Marquez was also from Barranquilla. So we have all of these really, it's a tiny town, a small city in Colombia, and we have all of this amazing talent. It's really a place that is, you can write like books for centuries about it because it is a very special place in the sense that it was very happy. The people there, like the energy there, the carnival, it's amazing. But for some reason, I always felt like I was this very cerebral kid that was kind of like born a little bit of a misfit. And my childhood was amazing. My parents are wonderful. The people around me wonderful. But I was a little bit like this place was not very intellectual. It was a beautiful party smile town. And I remember just discovering the internet and just feeling like, wow, I found this technology that can take me out of this place that I'm in geographically for periods of time and tap into knowledge and ideas. And I just remember that fascination and it always stuck with me. So even though I had a pretty idyllic childhood, it was this, in this like beautiful, magical place. I remember the internet being this like portal that I always knew like I want to be on the internet. I want to live and work on the internet. It was just something that stayed with me. So so that's kind of one piece. When people ask me about my childhood, I always have to bring up the fact that my father, every night at the dinner table, would ask us, "What did you do today to change the world?" Which was, in hindsight, a very heavy question, and probably is the reason I have so much existential anxiety because, I think that there's, it's like I was taught to not just be, but to do. It's like it's not enough to be. You have, what are you going to do with your potential? And so I feel like I carry this kind of pressure with me, and so in some ways I think that's kind of shaped who I am. But so first 18 years of my life I was living in Colombia, and when I turned 18, I went to college. I went to Brown in Rhode Island. I was a very kind of self-sufficient, kind of straight A kid in the sense that nobody was kind of telling me what to do, but I was always like finding a way to thrive within the system. So in the school, I got good grades. Got to the good college. I found a way to get the visa, stayed in the US. I kind of like found my track. But I don't know. I think the thing that has kind of accompanied me through all of this is just this fascination with knowledge and ideas, and just like this belief that ideas remain the most powerful kind of vehicle to change the world. Like that was the way I was going to kind of touch and leave my fingerprint in some kind of very abstract, vague way had to do with ideas. So I think in many ways, 9-year-old me would not be surprised at all that this is what I ended up doing.
That's amazing. I love this bias towards action. I have to also remember this when I have kids. But I think it's super cool, this question, what did you do today to change the world? It's ambitious, but I think that's exactly how it should be. I was just remembering I was playing a lot of football when I was young, and I had this friend who was like a bigger brother for me, and he wanted to be a pro player. And it was like our dream. We were always saying, I want to be the best footballer in the world. And it was such a clear goal. And of course, in sports, you have these very clear goals. But I think I really brought this kind of crazy dreaming into today, even as a designer. It sounds a bit crazy maybe, but I think just in the sense of dreaming super big. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
it's very
believing,
helpful.
like, yeah, dreaming super big and believing that I think is like 50% of it, right? It's like
Yeah.
the thing that keeps you from achieving your dream is not intelligence. It's kind of this self-belief. But I don't know, I do think maybe I'm kind of like overcorrecting from my childhood, but I'm very drawn to this idea of micro ambition these days, or
Hmm.
I think that there's so much to do locally when you think too much at scale, it's easy to get disappointed by the results. Whereas, I think about, 40,000 people read my newsletter. If I had like 40,000 people in a stadium, that's crazy. That's
Hmm.
so many people. On the internet, that doesn't seem like so much. So I don't know. I think it's important to kind of calibrate between, yes, change the world, but maybe the right lens is just how many lives you touch versus how many lives you reach. So there's like I
Mm.
think a difference between scale, which comes from like greed often, ego often, and something that comes from just like a deeper in the heart calling.
Um, Sorry, you once said that it's very hard to build new things. The default when you're starting something is nobody cares, and your job is to make them care. What does that journey of making people care look like day to day for you? And when you say your building, what's like the first image that comes to mind these days for you?
Um, this is such a good question because I don't necessarily have the answer, but I think that the idea that by default people don't care and your job is to make them care, I think that is at the heart of it what building in 2025 is about. I think that it is
Mm.
the challenge is no longer can you make software? Can
Mhm.
you write something? Of course, it is, it's hard to do those things with a level of quality, but the reality is that people are extremely over fatigued with consumption. The average person downloads 0 apps a month. If you think about, I mean, you could have the cure for cancer for all I know and post about it on Twitter and people could scroll past it just because we are living in this
Mm.
crazy twisted, you know, attention world where it's no longer about or have you built something great, but can you earn attention and distribution for it? That is just the reality of the world we live in. And so I think there's a way to look at this and sort of be disillusioned because there are people that play this game online and they
Mm.
find a way to kind of engagement farm and attention hack and it's sort of like nowadays it sort of matters less what you earn attention for as long as you're being controversial. It's sort of like I don't know if you've seen this example, but on
Mm.
tech Twitter, this company called Cluely has gone completely viral because they have these insane stunts and everything. Their tagline is cheat on everything, and they've earned a lot of attention, and
Mm.
so they found a way to play the game. They're beating, they're playing within the system, and I think it's
Mm.
very easy for artists and people like that, like me, that like to consider ourselves purists to kind of be cynical about that and be like, I'm not going to play that game. Like, but I think where I where I am now, is I actually have a collection in Sublime about this. It's called Do What You Love, but Solve for Distribution. Meaning it's not enough
Mm,
to just create something wonderful. You have to figure out how you reach the right people. And it's not enough to complain about, oh, the algorithms suck, the online social media sucks. No, you have to, you have to kind of be the bait that you wish to see in the world, like the fish bait you wish to see in the world. So I think I'm still trying to figure out the answer for this myself, but I've been writing about Sublime and my journey in public for years. One of the challenges is that my flavor of communication is long form writing, which is very antithetical to short form, 10-second dopamine videos. And so, I'm trying to like figure out how we grow our point of like we are good at getting a cohort of people that is relatively small, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000. How do we get more and more people to use Sublime, fall in love with it, understand the ethos? That's still a journey. And I think that, yeah, where I am now is rather than complaining and opting out of the system altogether, this question is staying with me around, be the bait you wish to see in the world. I think somebody once said or described sales as the transfer of enthusiasm. And I think that's such a powerful reframe because we tend to look at sales as like, oh, I'm gonna like, the used car salesman, it's a lot of snake oil. And, you see all these people saying this AI tool is gonna change the world and like all of this very kind of hyperbolic statements. But, I love Sublime. I use Sublime. How do I transfer that enthusiasm in a way that makes me feel whole? And I'm still answering
mm.
that question.
That's so good. It gives me so many thoughts. I think this whole distribution thing is something actually incredibly important for so many reasons and also so tricky and so present. I came to this moment also not long ago where I was like, I'm building present and this whole ecosystem and trying a bunch of things and it's fun and all. But of course, you come to some points, even if you don't want to, where you think, why didn't more people see this? Or why is there not more engagement or more than I hoped for? But also, you see so much stuff on the internet, obviously, that gets a lot of attention and is maybe really just trash or whatever. But I really came to this point of like, for most of the stuff on the internet that maybe doesn't get as much attention, it's really most of the time probably not about the quality, actually. It's more a question of distribution. If a post that I did recently on present, I don't know, it was very close to my heart and then get hundred likes. And I think I have to accept that this is maybe more a question of distribution and how the algorithm works than really actually the quality of the work itself. It was kind of eye-opening for me because it was a relief, because I thought maybe I really just have to finally get better at distribution and give it a chance. And then I remembered, oh my God, how many people probably give up or how heartbreaking it is. Because there is, of course, so many like small accounts, small YouTube channels, uh, unknown books, amazing short movies. And I think a lot of people in our time will probably translate the non-success of it to the quality of their work, but it is not necessarily true.
It's such a shame because I do think that there is sort of something very formulaic about the things that tend to go viral.
Mm.
And what would be sad is if artists and creatives became slaves to the algorithm and tried to create work to please the algorithm as opposed to the work that they're called to create. So, I think this is the nature of being a creative person in 2025 is, the algorithm exists and you have to figure out what is your
Mhm.
relationship to it.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, okay, classic example, small videos, small reels. I tried it out. It was something that I wanted to try out anyway because I was so afraid of it. And that's kind of a thing of mine that I kind of run
Yeah.
towards the things that I'm afraid of, which worked out quite well so far in life. So that's why I'm preaching it, of course, the classic out of the comfort zone thing. But also, it is really crazy how much of a difference this is when you make like video content, especially like kind of talking directly into the camera content. The algorithm picks it up, sends it to much more people. It was like 10x of what usually reaches people. It has to, of course, come from the same source. You know, I don't want to do now all of a sudden videos just because the
Yeah, yeah,
algorithm said, you know, it's a very tricky
yeah.
thing. My first video was called Cringe versus Cool because the first thing when I think of my bubble, let's say, or maybe my network, because I'm not in sales, I'm not a, you know, I'm not a tech bro, or you know, I'm not a influencer. I'm coming more from a kind of different world where there is not so many people doing this kind of videos, maybe. So it was a bit this fear of being cringe because, but I loved it, and a lot of people resonated with it. That's the way to go, I think, in a way.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally. I mean, I think everything you said really resonates. In fact, except the difference between you and I is I haven't crossed the chasm in videos. I have a collection on Sublime called I'm Going to Get Good at Video. It's a private collection, but I still haven't like I'm still too scared to do video. It just doesn't feel as natural to me. And
Mm,
but you know, I think the thing that at least I have arrived at is I don't feel comfortable on video yet, but I at least can name the fact that when I see something that makes me cringe, someone putting themselves out there on video, I think the deeper part of me actually wishes I could put myself out there like that. But
yeah.
I can't. And so I sort of like, instead of being cynical about it, I'm sort of like, I try to become curious. Like, what is it about
Mm,
this that is making me feel this way? And I think if you interrogate it further and further, I think it's the people that are not scared of being cringe that
yeah.
is just a different level of this.
I mean, there's so many, obviously, it's so layered. I think in a lot of different areas in life, the people who are really kind of successful, um, it's mostly the people who really manage to, you know, don't give a shit about looking like a fool or like really doing more embarrassing stuff. Like it's again this thing of distribution. Like it's not necessarily the people who have the most talent or the most quality of work, but it's the people who dare.
Skill that you didn't need in the past, which is like self-promotion. And if you wrote a book,
Mm,
I don't know, think about like Virginia Woolf, or, yes, they found a
mm,
distributor. Sure, they would probably go and do like media rounds and speak at media, but
yeah.
they didn't wake up every day thinking, how am I going to, promote myself in a 10-second or 30-second video? They weren't constantly having this need to self-promote. And I think that I don't necessarily think you have to do that today to thrive,
Mm,
but I think it's rare for people to really break out without having a kind of outstanding social media presence. And it's
mm,
just the nature of what it takes to build today. It's not enough
yeah.
to make something of good quality.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a very good point that you also have always mentioned that you have to just accept that this is the reality. It's the same with AI. Like you can be mad at it, you can find everything unfair, but that is just the reality. And then it comes down to how you deal with it or how much you're willing to deal with it. And I think it's also a really interesting challenge in our times, like because there are also a lot of ways maybe that are still undiscovered where you can do these things in a non cringe way or a non super promoty way. Maybe also difference between like really hardcore promoting your thing or you just switch to different media, but you have the same message. I, for example, tried with my video. It was basically the same thing that I was always writing in my texts or newsletters, just really translated into a different medium. It was revelation for me because I was like, okay, it's actually the same message. It just actually reaches more people just because also a lot of people, me included, like to consume info or advice this way instead of a long text. Sometimes not, but it's just to have this option. Anyway, I also wanted to say that maybe you're not super comfortable with it, but I mean, you're very, very eloquent. Your talk was so well delivered and so well done. And so maybe maybe you're just really afraid of something that you should not be afraid of.
I don't know. I think there's something about I have been so interested in studying the history of the web and the rise of the social web and the performative web and the way that we've basically like have changed our lives to be a to like live our lives for these little tiny squares. And so there's
Mm,
something to me just philosophically that just this idea of thinking of what I'm doing as content is
mhm,
it just doesn't sit so well with me. I think I have to get over that. I have to get over the idea that that like my art, my life, my ideas can be boiled down to these little tiny squares of content that are feeding this kind of like endless algo and ad machine. I think I've just been so interested in the kind of like intellectual side of
mm,
this that it just has gotten just thinking out loud. I haven't really fully interrogated this about myself, but yeah, I think that curiosity is a lot better than cynicism in general, and
mm,
that complaining is boring. I could just sit here and complain about like self-promoting is lame, doing video content is lame, but if I believe in what I'm doing and I think I have a point of view and something worth telling, then I've got to solve for distribution in my
mm,
way. And I
mm.
think that's just a much healthier
I mean,
mindset.
I think 100%. And I think, for example, what you did with In the Weeds, which I really enjoyed. I think you said, I think I have this in my notes, that your goal is to become the world's most transparent founder. It really resonates with me because I don't know exactly why I'm doing this, but um, it, I'm sharing a lot in kind of smaller groups. So, for example, now it's just in the kind of semi-closed present community space where I'm having these weekly logs. But I'm doing this since like, I don't know, 3, 4 years, where I'm like every week giving, like having a little like log what I did to advance the project and what are the struggles and so on. I'm kind of doing really for me and hopefully also, of course, that other people um, understand that it is a really long journey and there's a lot of doubts uh, attached to it. So really the end goal is, yeah, to encourage people always, to show that everyone has bad days and good days. That's a whole thing of present anyway. But I can totally understand this transparency urge. I don't know where it comes from for you, but I'm very interested in it. And I was wondering, yeah, what's driving this commitment to transparency and what are also the costs of it, or like how do you deal with it?
I think you mentioned just now that the hardest part is getting people to care. And I think one way to
Mm,
make them care is to bring them on the journey with you. Like people care about people. It's different to tell someone like, "Hey, here's this, like software to save your ideas." It's another
mm,
thing to say like, "Hey, here's like everything about why I'm doing this and what motivates me and what I'm going through as I'm building this." And so I think we talked about getting people to care. I think one way to
mm.
get them to care is to bring them on the journey with you, make them feel like they're a part of it, get them closer, help them relate to it. Everyone in
Yeah.
some way, shape, or form is building something, whether they're building a company, a newsletter, a family, like everyone, we all as humans relate to building. So I think for me, this comes from it feels like a natural way to get people to care is to bring them closer on this journey. I also think that I mean, to the point I said earlier about like be the bait you wish to see in the world,
Mm,
I genuinely cannot stand performative BS. Like building a company is hard, and I'd rather be known as someone that's honest, that is
mm.
not just tweeting the 6 months to get to 10 million ARR, and all this stuff that then behind the scenes it's like, you know, they didn't talk about the 5 years of like endless pivots or like,
Yeah.
of like no, like there is no silver bullet. There is no such thing as overnight success. And I think on the internet it's so easy to believe that there is. And I think especially with
Mm,
AI, the number of times I'm like, I feel incompetent. Why are people saying that they have this AI tool that automatically makes their company grow 10x? And it's like, why can't I do that? But then if I
Mm.
share that it's hard for me to do that, everyone's like, yes, I agree. So I think my flavor of how I want to show up is just honestly, because
Mm.
I think there's a lack of that in the world today. There's a lack of honesty. There's a lot of BS. And I think the most me and the most sublime way to show up feels like to do the opposite.
I love it. Couldn't agree more. I think it's so important to have people doing this. And I think in almost every industry, because for us it's also with the magazine, if you go to a nice magazine store in here in Paris, most of the magazines, or let's say like fashion magazines, they look perfect. Like there's perfect photography in it, perfect shoots, perfect interview with someone successful, and it looks beautiful. At some point, it was very boring to me, and also I felt almost that it's like unfair to to people starting out to only see this perfection, because of course you're super blocked then, and you can become very discouraged to think like, oh my god, how can I ever get there? But then if you are a bit longer in the actual industry or have some more experience, you figure out that no one has it figured out, and that everything is a process, and everything is a lot of mistakes making and so on. But it's
Yeah,
rarely getting shown, and I find this brutal in a way. Like if you
yeah,
don't know this, you can be so discouraged, and a lot of people are, and think they're not talented enough. Uh, and I think that's also really BS. And I think that's why it's so important to have some people uh, being really honest and say, hey, this is how we actually do these kind of shoots, or like this is everything that went wrong, and this is the money we lost, and like these honest stories are really for me like, yeah, also what I want to do and push and show, because I really feel this encourages people. You just need to see that we are all human, and no one has it figured out. And even the biggest stars or the biggest legends of the game, they also don't have it figured out. So it's important
totally,
to show
totally.
that.
I think that the I have developed a lot more confidence in the last decade of my life than I did kind of growing up. And I think a lot of that confidence has come from getting to know my heroes in a sense. Like if
Mm,
there's like an author or someone I love and realizing,
yeah.
oh, they're just like me, you know? It's like it's not that I'm disappointed. It's
Mm,
that I had them on a pedestal and
mhm,
nobody's got it figured out. And so the more
yeah.
I've been kind of in rooms with people, whether it's like a CEO of a Fortune 500 company or, someone that's very respected, I'm like, oh, I could also be that. There's nothing that is different about, it could be you, it could be me, it could be any of us. So I think there's a sort of like confidence that comes from that in some sense the media has stripped, because everything that the media shows is
Mm,
looking at things through rose tinted glasses. It's the you know
mm,
the they profile, like, I mean, obviously in fashion magazines it's the glossy cover, the all of this stuff, but even with the founders, it's when everything turned out well. It's
yeah.
nobody is talking about it in the middle. When you're in the messy middle of things, it doesn't really get reported on all that
Yeah,
much
yeah, and
for your life.
it's a shame. I think there's a tendency that everything gets a bit more honest, or like you see much more the process nowadays. Also because I think that's in the end one big part that's kind of left. That's why I think also, sports, live entertainment concerts, but also like that all these YouTube videos of people making stuff, building a house in the woods. Everything behind the scenes is getting more and more popular, because there's where you can see the actual like mistakes and the grit of humanity. And I think that's actually gives me a lot of hope, because yeah, that there is an obvious craving for seeing the real human side of things. That's
Totally.
really cool. And also, I mean, it reminded me of Steve Jobs' quote that everything around you was made by people that are no smarter than you. That means that you can change it. Like everything you see, every bridge, every crazy app. I think that's so important because we always think, oh my God, the genius, with genius must have like almost like unreal powers
Totally.
made this. But it's no, it's humans and they're definitely not smarter than you. That's just the fact. But we really forget this. And I
Yeah.
think it's really helpful to not forget this, that it's all made by humans and yeah, therefore everyone can do it. It's just then it comes down to, of course, doing it and
I
finding
love
the
that.
right tools and team and so on. But it is
And,
possible, and that's
and
important.
choosing what to care about, right? I think that
Mhm.
it's so seductive to have a lot of options and, because everything is hard, but if you choose one thing and really truly care about one thing, it's just surprising how far you can go in that one
Mm.
direction. So I think
Oh God.
choosing.
Yeah, I don't want to open this whole bucket of because that's such a big topic, I think. Like, yeah, just choosing one thing. I'm struggling a lot with it, which is a blessing and a curse, I think. It's wonderful that we have all these opportunities and possibilities nowadays, and more people have more opportunities just because of the internet and everything that's available, also education wise and all. But at the same time, I think it gets trickier and trickier to, yeah, make the right decisions maybe or actually decide and then also, how do you say, like commit to to
Yeah,
to to one thing. It's I think that's a big problem actually. Chasing the shiny objects and staying with something.
totally. And I also think that there's always trends and fads and something in the zeitgeist,
Mm,
and you can always be chasing the zeitgeist, whether it was
mm,
crypto or AI or this or that, and all sorts of trends. But I think the bigger question is like, what can you do consistently for long periods of
mm,
time you will still enjoy? Because the trends
yeah.
will come and go. These will, they're like the thing when I think about my journey with Sublime, I think of this as a multi-decade project.
Hmm.
And you have to, I want to kind of stay around long enough to get lucky. Because if I need to get lucky in the next year or two, it's like, no, maybe 7 years from now, there's something in the now that makes Sublime perfectly positioned. But you have to have like had that consistency for a long period of time, which is also why I like orienting the company around it being enjoyable for me. Because if it's stressful, if it's, there's a too big of a team, if we have,
Mm.
too much pressure to kind of grow at a certain pace, then it stops being enjoyable. And the thing I'm optimizing for is existing and existing long enough to ride like a great wave.
I can so 100,000% agree, and I think I mean, that's exactly how I plan it with present. It gives a lot of relief to think very long term. Also, I think it also can be, because you can say, you have time. Can be also a bit dangerous. I think I think that happens sometimes to me
Yes.
to be like too, the time horizon is too long, and then you need still like some
Yes.
deadlines and
You,
milestones
you need a
and
bias
stuff like
for
this.
action.
Yeah.
You still need to have like action, but I think
Hmm.
it's less it's about constantly doing things, but not expecting the world to fully understand you and meet you in this moment.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think all of my regrets in life are about times when I didn't act. It's rarely about times when I
Yeah.
did act. So
100%.
knowing that inaction is something a lot far more regrettable. So I don't think it's mutually exclusive having this kind of long time horizon that is kind of like has blinders on and is not necessarily looking, to the side, see what people are doing with a profound bias for action, I think is the right
Yeah.
combination.
I think I don't know, in my opinion, it's a smart thing to do or to find something that can survive trends or that is or something that is so close to your heart I know it's not for everyone also, but for me, I'm always, for many reasons, I think, try to find these sort of projects. Present, I built also really with having in mind that I want to do it forever, like as long as I can. So it's really kind of a lifelong project. It starts with a name. I mean, it's a bit vague maybe, but it can be a lot of things. And I really
Yeah,
like the idea of building something really like at some point you have a lot of history also, and you collected also a lot of mistakes, but I think that's super valuable.
totally.
Like if I look back 10 years ago, maybe then there's something is very maybe something breakthrough, successful. Present issue 10, just finally the breakthrough. And then maybe a whole bunch of new people discover you. But then you have such a string of stories. We have such a big fundament already behind. I think that's super valuable to have a constant striving for something, if that makes sense. I
Yeah.
highly
And
appreciate this.
like present, as you said, is more of a container that
Yeah.
is embodies like way of looking at the world, and it could be many things. It could be a magazine, it could be merch. I think similarly when I think about Sublime, yes, there's tools, but there's editorial, there's community,
Mhm.
there's rituals. There's so many things that we can do just within this container. So I think
Yeah.
it's important to think about it as a home or a sandbox for your
Yeah.
ideas rather than very rigid, fixed thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing that
Yeah.
sustains us is, somebody sending us a note about how amazing what we're doing is. So it not doesn't necessarily have to be huge volume, but you definitely need some feedback loop with a community,
Mm.
because it's
Oh yeah.
otherwise a very, very lonely
Oh
road.
yeah. Lonely, and also I think yeah, it's a trap that a lot of people, me included, sometimes fall into, that we're like staying so much in our bubble, working on our little new idea. And of course it's scary to get people in and like share it and get feedback, and it's unrealistic most of the time to just like come out of your monk mode and then you
Yeah,
have the perfect thing. It doesn't work like that. So you have to have
totally.
like, I mean, you know it better than anyone with like building an MVP. Like what is the first thing that I can build that I can actually share and then actually get feedback?
Yeah.
um, Maybe that's a good segue. I mean, I think what you're building, you and your team, and how you're building it is very inspiring for many reasons. What I was interested in is, at the moment, what is the part of your work or your normal day to day that you love the most about it? Like, what are the best parts of your profession, let's say? And I also want to give it the same amount of energy to answering what's the biggest struggle and what you really hate. What are the challenges and what is the things that you rather wish they were not part of it, but they are.
Yeah.
It's a bliss and struggle.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great question. Okay, so I need long periods of solitude
Mm,
to be sane. I like being in Google Docs, writing for extended periods of time. I like being in Figma, and I like being in Figma with Gabe, who designs Sublime. We designed it together. So the thing that makes me that the thing I love the most is being in flow state in creating mode.
mm,
Like I am deep into something I'm writing, like preparing for the presentation in Stockholm, or I am deep in Figma trying to untangle some puzzle. For example, now I'm thinking very deeply about how do we go from curation to creation? What are the ways in which that kind of jump can happen inside of Sublime if I've curated a lot of sources that I love and trust and I want to synthesize them into something new. So those challenges and puzzles and kind of building those ideas get me super excited. Anything that's storytelling related gets me
mm,
super excited. I'm a big ideas person, so naturally I have a lot of ideas. So just the thought of, this idea came to me and just like writing it down and then sharing it with the team, I love. The flip side to that is that so much of building something like Sublime is in the maintenance, the non-sexy stuff of
mm,
there's a bug here, you know, they changed iOS 26 changed everything, and so the thing broke, and so or like Kindle changed their API, or all of this like annoying, like mundane day-to-day stuff. I think um is I think when you're building something, you have to kind of, it's a little bit schizophrenic in the sense that you're going
Mm.
from this super optimistic, selling dreams, putting down fires, thinking big, but thinking small. And so I don't know. I think that the hardest part is the maintenance work. I think the
Mm.
managing part of it is hard for me. I think I'm more of a leader than I am a manager, meaning like I
Mm.
think that I can orchestrate and align people on a vision, but the day-to-day management and of the rowing in the same direction is tricky, especially because I don't I'm not a big delegator in the sense that the things that I do, I want to do them myself.
Mm.
And so I want more time to be in the micro details. And so I think that the kind of shift from the macro to the micro is a hard part about where we are. And I mean, I think that business is about two things. It's about making something people want and then selling that thing.
Mhm.
And both of those things take kind of different parts of your brain. And I'm
Yeah.
kind of having to use these two constantly. And I actually really do love that, because I think I thrive in environments where I'm kind of like zooming in and zooming out. But
Mm.
it's hard. That part of the maintenance part of all of that is very hard.
Yeah. But it's, I think we can be proud of building something that is hard, if that makes sense. I think it's so like being a founder, trying to build something with all the stress that comes with it. You have to learn so much things that you maybe never expected to learn, and deal with so many different humans. And that's why I'm also, I think, always preaching, doing your own thing, whatever it is, or building something. It's just insane the amount of learning that happens. Also because you do so many things that go maybe not the way you expected, but that's like the best way to really grow.
Totally.
Sorry,
Totally.
I need to talk to you about the talk in Stockholm, because it also resonated with a lot of people, including myself. There was so much in it that gave so many like refreshing perspective on this whole thing, um, which still feels super early. At the same time, yeah, it's so overwhelming. I'm very excited. I think I'm a bit too excited. Like every day, obviously, there is so much stuff happening, and I think it will be its own challenge and discipline in the future, how to just deal with all of it, how to stay clear, and how to deal with every possibility. I just wanted to talk to you about this, and if you could maybe tell us if that makes sense to you, in a short way, what it means to become un-LLMable as a builder and creator, and what you mean by that.
Yeah, I mean,
Or
thank you, first of all. So the talk that I delivered at Stockholm, I think what I was trying to share was my journey from seeing AI as this kind of alien, adversarial, threatening technology that was going to replace us, to wow, this is actually not necessarily going to replace us. It's actually an opportunity to rethink our role and our humanity. And I started off with just the one kind of um, moment that had resonated with me over the last year was this artist, Holly Herndon, reframing AI as collective intelligence. Because if you think about
Mm.
LLMs, what they're really fundamentally doing is just using statistics to take advantage of all the things we've done together. So if you're going to start, a project from scratch, doing the creative direction, instead of starting with a blank page, you could always query, the kind of corpus of humanity and start from that base. So it no longer was, oh, this is going to do that work for me. It's how is this going to change what I can make? So I became very interested in that question, that reframing from artificial intelligence to collective intelligence unraveled a whole host of reframings around, what might change with AI, and some of the things that I highlighted in the talk were things like, actually you won't have less work. You actually may even feel like you have more, because it is possible now to do so many things that you could only once dream of. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of us just feel this paradox immensely, where we're just like drowning in overwork, even though we have these very powerful new tools. So I called that a reality gap, and there were several others. The second one was about how the bottleneck to great work was not expertise, but rather courage and judgment and creativity and imagination, and it just how the skills that matter are going to be different. Which, funnily enough, I mean, you talk about cringe and stuff, like the skill to be cringe is not to be an expert. It's not to be a straight A student. It's not to have gotten, perfect score on your tests. It's something else that comes from like deeper within. And then lastly, I talked about how we've been trained for so long to think like machines about optimization and productivity and speed. And so now the job is, how do we embrace our humanity? Because if we focus on speed, we will lose to the robots. Like, there's just no world where you're going to produce faster than any AI will. And so that really started to bring up this idea of, oh wow, so what does it mean to be un-LLM-able? There are these qualities that make someone very well equipped to thrive in this new era. And it's not being an expert, it's not being the smartest person in the room, it's something else. And I think that a lot of people actually, after the talk, came up to me and said, like, how do I become un-LLM-able? And I think I'm also still in the process of answering that question. But one example that I cited in an essay that I published following the talk in Stockholm addressing this idea is this example of Time magazine has, I think, 16 million followers on Twitter or something. They publish a post about the perils of constant scrolling on your phone. The post has 38 likes. Meanwhile, this woman called August Lamb, she publishes something about how she's going to get rid of her laptop and she's just going to have a flip phone and go to the library. And the post gets 30,000 views, even though she has 20,000 followers. And that to me is a perfect example of being un-LLM-able, because an AI cannot live. It does not have the lived experience of the complexity, the failures and faults, and just all of this richness that comes from having lived and experienced the world through a very kind of unique lens. And so to me, it's just so much of what's going to have to happen is unlearning the things that we were taught that were going to make us thrive, right? I think about my kids, like, so much of their schooling today is about fitting in. You have to go to school to fit in. And so we teach kids for 20 years to fit in, and then we throw them into a society where they need to stand out. So how do you go from a place where they're taught to fit in to, oh, actually, fitting in is not going to help you. Fitting in is like the average, mediocre, generic LLM stuff. Now you have to do something that's the opposite of fitting in. But if we've been taught to fit in our whole lives, how do we unlearn that? So that's where my curiosity is now, is just really kind of understanding these forces.
So good. It's also on my mind a lot, but it's very hard to articulate it. So I think that's why it was also so powerful how you did this, because this is kind of a new problem, right? Or like it's something that we deal with now, and we need to find ways to articulate these things or talk about it or have these words for it. I found myself in the last weeks talking to people who have these perfect Instagram profiles. Let's take the example of a designer. There's a lot of design profiles that look just like perfect, edgy, avant-garde, but it's graphic. I mean, if the work is amazing, I'm like, wow, this is so cool. But I find myself of 95% of the time looking at it and skipping it because it's just, I need to find the imperfection. I need to
Feel
find
the
the
problem.
humanness. I think I kind of, for whatever reason, did it a lot with how I'm presenting myself. I never had like only my work. I showed a lot of personal stuff. It's just a different way to go. I'm really not saying that this is how anyone should do it. It's just like really who I am. But I do believe that nowadays it is important that everyone tries to bring in something of their uniqueness into it. I don't know, something personal together with your work to make a connection. Then I find it much, much more interesting. I want to know where you come from. If I see a designer portfolio, I really want to know how did you grow up, or what else are you interested in? What's your inspiration? So yeah, I don't know. It really resonates with me, and I find myself recommending people to find a way, be it a Substack, even though of course a lot of people say, oh Hugo, yeah, okay, maybe you have fun with doing your Substack or your little videos, but it's not for everyone. And I get it, but I think it's important to have something where you can show other sides of you, like show who you are, besides only your finished output.
Totally.
Yeah.
The way that I think about it is process over destination, right? Because if
Mm,
anyone can produce any output using AI, what matters is how did you arrive there? What was this still like? We are humans, we are the storytelling animal, we are drawn to stories. And so
yeah.
it's not enough to have like a perfectly polished Instagram with all of these graphics. You want to understand the story and the process.
Exactly. Talking about stories and humanness, I personally feel often overwhelmed, as I said earlier, just like by all the possibilities. I don't want to complain. Present also for me means saying, or like I really don't have anything in me where I'm saying, uh, it was all better before. I really do believe we're always living in the best time possible. I'm really grateful to live right now with everything that comes with it. And I know that everyone always tells me the world is burning, and I get it. It's difficult. We grew up in our generation sort of with always conflicts and everything. But just wanted to say that I'm always for the present moment, and I'm grateful for where we're living now. But that being said, it comes to a lot of challenges, and you have 3 kids, and in your bio it says mother of humans that never sleep. And I'm just having I have such a respect for parents and people who have like who have even more responsibility, and the biggest responsibility of all with having kids. And I'm just always amazed and also curious, how do you do that? Like, how do you manage it all? Maybe you have some tips for people who also aspire to be parents one day. And maybe also, how does motherhood inform how you build? How does it change your relationship to time, to risk, to what matters?
My answer is going to disappoint most people, but the answer is I don't do it all. Life is all about
Mm-hmm.
trade-offs. Those
Mm,
trade-offs have consequences. And because my family and my company are my two priorities, there are, and I want to show up for both. It means, for example, that I rarely work on weekends. Could I be moving certain things about Sublime faster? Yes, but weekends are sacred. It also means that I have missed important times with my kids because I work during the day, full time. And I think that what's most important is to, instead of having like blanket statement advice, it's to really understand who you are. And what I have learned about myself is that when I'm not working or engaged in a project, in a creative project of some sort, my mood plummets and I get cranky. I need to be working on some sort of creative project. I think that like I think having a project is and for me, I guess we spoke about my upbringing, those tend to be like kind of heady. It's not like some arts and crafts project with my kids. I'm not a Pinterest mom. That's not my way of being of showing up for my kids. So I think first it's acknowledging who you are and knowing that I think that people who are very smart and ambitious and have a lot of potential tend to become bitter if they don't live their potential. I
Mm,
have seen
mm,
that happen a lot of times with mothers specifically. So I'm
mm.
very mindful of that. I think that kind of avoiding that is part of what has kind of driven me to really try to hold both. Um, but I think that the balance always fluctuates, and my confidence in how I'm kind of striking that balance also fluctuates. So, there are moments when, like family life seems great, work life doesn't, and then there's moments where work life seems great and family doesn't. And things don't get easier. You just get better at managing the the chaos.
This was a very inspiring answer, I think. I think you can also put it to so many things in life in general. Like knowing who you are and working on that is super helpful in every area.
You can have it all. Like, what does all even
Yeah,
mean? There are
exactly.
24 hours a day, like inevitably, if I'm going to
Yeah,
be working at 5 and my son plays
yeah,
soccer at 3, I won't make
yeah,
it to his soccer class. That's a trade-off. Am
yeah.
I comfortable with the trade-off? Like, I am, but it is a trade-off.
That reminds me of Oliver Berkman and everything that he's preaching. Just say goodbye to these maybe old school ways
Yeah,
of thinking, like, the perfect life balance and like, yeah, this like superhuman that you can really do it all. It's of course it's not true.
it's
Um,
not true.
but it's really how to deal with or how to accept the actual reality. And I think then it comes back to a lot of honesty and communicating this and showing who you are and saying, hey, this is what is important for me. Here I made a mistake. Understanding where you put your time and energy and why. Yeah, it's very, very
Yeah.
fascinating. What kind of internet do you hope your kids inherit? Just while we're talking about kids and also Sublime as your legacy project. How do you see it maybe in a 10 years or something when your kids are maybe a bit older?
I think the thing that keeps me up at night that I'm obsessed with is how do we go from passive consumption to creation? Because the problem is that the internet has made passive consumers out of all of us. It used to be 30, 40 years ago that you would get the paper in the morning, read the paper for an hour, then go on and live your life. Now people are scrolling 8 hours a day. I see it in my kids. My kids are, they're like watching a movie is hard because they're used
Uh,
to very short YouTube shorts now. Like it's like the TikTokification of everything.
mm,
So what I hope that we figure out as a species is to tilt the ratio of mindless consumption to building something meaningful, right? Because now it's like it now like likely exceeds like 10 to 1, and
mm,
it should like, or maybe even be closer to like 50 to 1. But I have found no better joy than creating something, being in flow state. Like it's like the opposite of the anxiety of like passive consumption is meaningfully engaging in your own thing. And so I really hope that the internet that my kids inherit, the internet that I'm also personally invested in with Sublime, is one that does not demand your presence all the time. It shouldn't be something we have to look at all the time with these algorithms designed to addict us. Uh, and that it helps people create more. So I think, it's very consistent. The internet I want for my kids is very consistent with the internet I'm hoping to build with Sublime. You can't go viral on Sublime. So there is no for you algorithm on Sublime. It's more of the kind of serendipity of a bookstore where pick something up and maybe it
mm.
takes you somewhere else, but it's not there is not this like crazy dopamine. So that would be my answer. I think all of the we talked about algorithmic culture and what all of that has done. I think something that I heard recently from Yancey Strickler is he said that the general kind of sentiment of the internet today is scam or be scammed. That is how people
Mm,
feel. That on the internet there is this kind of like you either find a way to kind of trick people or you will be tricked. And
Mm,
it's so sad to me that that feels like
mm,
that is the prevailing way of using the internet. I think to an extent it's true. People are slaves to the algorithm, and you have to figure out how to beat the algorithm so you get visibility. And so you say whatever you have to say to get to that visibility, instead of like of just focusing on quality work. So I think that incentives rule the world, and I'm hopeful that this internet experiment, I mean network the social network kind of phase of the internet is so nascent. It hasn't even
mm.
been like, what, 20 years, less. So I think that we are probably naive in assuming that this is the way it's always going to be. I think it'll change a lot, and we will have learned from this phase and really orient these tools towards human flourishing more than anything else.
I love it. We talked about so many things, but I'm also really interested always in like maybe the more banal questions or maybe like the simple things in life. So I'm wondering if you have any mantras or reminders that are close to your heart that you maybe come back to
I should be the quote lady because Sublime is full of all
without
of
opening
these things.
Sublime.
I don't think there's one that is with me always. I think there are phases of my life where I
Mm,
hold one more than the other. Right now, I feel very compelled by Bradbury's Don't Think. I think I am such an overthinker,
mm.
and I sort of like have this analysis paralysis where I play out different things in my head and I overthink, should I send this or this, and so
Yeah.
part of what I'm trying to do is just like, don't think. Thinking is the enemy of creativity. Feel, and just like, we talked about like inaction being like the enemy of everything. And so I think thinking is what prevents you from taking action sometimes. So I really like the don't think from Ray Bradbury. I had like a post-it for like a month or two recently on that I think my husband threw out, but it was somewhere like around this office, and it just said don't think. So that's the one that
Maybe he was confused. He was like, "What the hell?" Don't think.
what the heck is it?
Yeah, I love this so much. It's just like it ties so much into, I have this whole thing of like how to start, I like all these tricks to get you started because I think that's one of the biggest blockers. So this is also a reminder of a lot of times that it comes in all shapes and forms, but like we are so in your head and it's so much like ego or what I like resistance. That Stephen Pressfield calls it resistance, this inner force we
Mhm.
all have that wants to keep us from any good action towards anything that is worthwhile or important to us or others. And don't think is for me kind of a sign to like to resistance to say, okay, I get it. Yeah, I see what my brain is trying to tell me, but it's a lot of chatter. That the brain is talking a lot and thinking a lot, and it's not necessarily always smart or helpful. So don't think it's a really good one, I think.
Totally. It's interesting. You opened up the conversation with the mushroom psychedelic experience, and
Hmm.
the way I describe just bringing now it's kind of all coming full circle
Yeah.
because I had this think in my desk for a few months recently, and I've been thinking a lot about how thinking can be the enemy of creativity. And that psychedelic experience that I had recently, what was so profound about it, and what is hard to put into words is that the insights that it gives you, they don't come from thinking or intellectualizing your problems, concerns, worries. It comes from something that is embodied. It's like the difference between reading a book with advice and that advice being injected into your veins. And so to me, so much of that like out of body experience is like the messages that you get, they're not necessarily radical. It's things that you intellectually know. But there's a difference between knowing something and actually integrating it and living it. And I think that that experience for me, which was my first time having any sort of psychedelic experience, was about something, messages that I internalized not from thinking, but from something a lot more profound.
Wow. Yeah, your tweet was really, it hit hard. It was just the way you talked about it. It was so
Yeah,
inspirational because just the way you framed it, like this experience that lasted like 6 hours was like much more helpful for you than all therapy, meditation, religion, writing, productivity
everything.
hacks,
Everything. I'm on a mission
everything.
to get my mom to do mushrooms, my dad. I want like everyone to. I now think it is not right to live in this kind of planet Earth for 80, 90, 100 years and not
Mm.
experience something as transcendental as that.
Mhm. Mm. I was just reminded of also like a different kind of trip in a famous Berlin club. It was such a beautiful experience, and I just told my friend I want every politician to just experience this once, like the leaders of the world. And
Yes,
I'm
yes,
like
yes.
convinced it would change so much. It's like also, of course, it's a lot about letting go, or also like listening to your actual inner voice, and like just feeling this bliss and togetherness. And
Totally.
yeah, it's fascinating. Happy that you had this beautiful experience.
Me
Sounded
too.
definitely awesome and super cool. Sorry, I think we covered a lot. I think there's one last question, and I'm so happy that we did this. So my last question is, what does being present mean to you?
First of all, I want to acknowledge that I have a very hard time. Like it's not a skill that I have. It's a skill that I am aware I don't have. And I think, I mean, defining being present. So much of the default state of mind that we have is either worried about the past or anxious about the future. And I think being present is when none of those things exist because you are just witnessing the moment with zero consideration for the past or the future. And nothing is harder for me than not worrying about the future. So I have a very hard time my you've probably like noticed a thread in this conversation that I'm a very cerebral kid. I was very kind of drawn to thought and intellect and reading and all of these very brainy things. And so quieting kind of the thoughts in my head is very, very um hard for me. I do feel like in some ways like I have my head stuck up my ass, and
Mm.
that is just kind of like something, some kind of demon I have to work with. And I think I think I've sort of been in this quest, or my kind of there is this kind of deep rooted desire to arrive at clarity. I don't even know
Mm.
what kind of clarity I'm aspiring to get to, but it's like it's like I want to make sure that what I'm doing and how I'm doing it is like it's meant to be right, and like all of that comes from this false belief that there is a place to arrive at. Whereas being present is the opposite. It's like there is nowhere to go but here. Like it's like be here now. And my mind is like, oh, where is it that I'm going? And like I want to find out where I'm going. So to me it's very, very hard, I think, to kind of quiet that voice. And I think there are certain things that snap me out of that more effectively than others. Like music is a great one. I love, like to me music has that ability to kind of like transport, me into kind of a different plane, long walks as well. But I have found nothing that could quiet the part of my brain that is ruminating with anxiety as effective as really truly like a mushroom ceremony experience. The effects have been, I think, I mean, it's been like a week or two. So I'm talking as a novice here that I don't have a lot of experience doing this. I'm just somebody that is blown away by, somebody that has a hard time staying present, that has a lot of thoughts, that is constantly ruminating. about the future, that has this kind of need to arrive at clarity, I, just like being thrusted to this place where you experience something truly sublime, and that has just a way of quieting the ego part of the brain, or I don't know what the scientific name for that part of the brain that psychedelics quiets. But anyways, it's still a journey. I am not the best person to answer this question because I do a lot of yoga, but like during yoga classes, I still have like a lot of thoughts about other things. I have a hard time, being in the moment. But I am also aware of how important it is to conquer that.
I think you're a great person to answer this, and I think it was a great answer. I think it's also no, I think it's maybe also a misconception that, I mean, it's more about awareness. Same with meditation, this misconception that the goal is to quiet your mind or to not think, which is, of course, it's not possible. So it's more about being aware what you're thinking and labeling it and starting new. And this is what I love about mindfulness meditation, like acknowledging that you were lost in thought and then just rebooting, starting again, beginning again. You can apply this to so much in life. And also it's super hard being present, but it's something good to strive for. You were saying that you love what you love about your work is when you enter this flow state. And I think the flow state is also this beautiful example of total presence.
Presence.
Like, yeah, really not thinking about the time, not realizing how much time passed. No worries. When the mind is focusing on one thing, it feels incredible. And that's also maybe a great advertisement for finding something to work on that allows you easily to get into sort of flow state. I think that's a really worthwhile goal because
Totally.
that's a really beautiful thing.
I think about the way to navigate this kind of the chaos of the digital age. We humans are not equipped to deal with this abundance, right? We went from
Mm,
being hunter gatherers in a world of scarcity
mm,
where we needed to make sure there was enough food for a family to eat, to now like it's the opposite. It's like everyone is like dying of like overabundance of options, of content, of,
mm.
nearly everything. And I think a way to really navigate this digital world with clarity and conviction is to create the conditions to be in flow state more often.
Yeah. Amen. I think that was a perfect ending to this wonderful conversation. Sorry, I'm
Amazing.
so happy.
So
I think we covered so many things. My head and my heart is full. And I'm so happy that you shared this. You're a really amazing person to talk to. I think you're doing amazing work with everything that you're doing. And I just want that you keep on doing it and keep also this beautiful
oh,
mindset that you have. It was very, very cool
thank you so much.
to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a really lovely conversation. Likewise, love what you're doing with Present and all of the creative work you're putting out there. And hopefully, yes, we get to collaborate and do lots of more things together over
Yes,
time.
that would be so nice. I'm sure we will make something cool happen, and I will keep you updated on all the next steps, and then we find a nice way to do all this and do stuff with it. But I think we
Okay.
covered, yeah, a lot of great stuff, and I'm super happy, and I thank you.
Thank you, Hugo.
So
Alrighty.
from Paris.